Hey everyone, John here from the Deers Embroidery Legacy, and today I have a question that came in on a social media post. Now the title of the post is, Need Help with Pricing. It says, what would you charge for an order of 100 coats with a design that's about 5,000 stitches and needed in a week? Does the size of the client you're working with influence your pricing, if they're a big company versus small company, for example? I was thinking $10 to $15 a coat. I'm afraid of price scaring them. I also don't want to charge like $6 a coat. Now this is a pretty loaded question, and if I were going to give a really accurate answer, I would need to ask about 100 questions and probably have a sit down. But what I'm going to do instead is give you some things to consider when you're basing your pricing and how you should base your pricing to be profitable with embroidery, because that really is the goal. Attention all machine embroidery beginners. Are you struggling to hoop your fabrics, don't know what thread to use, or even what tension is? Sign up for our free Embroidery for Beginners course and become an expert in no time. Click the link in the description to get started. Now, a friendly reminder, if you like these types of videos, please subscribe and give us a like. It really does help us out. And also subscribe for our free Embroidery Beginners course, because it's free and it's packed with great useful information. Now, the first thing I take into account is, what type of equipment do you currently own? Do you have a home machine, which is a single needle flatbed machine, which runs a lot slower and takes a little bit more time to set up? Or do you have a multi-needle machine? And if it is a multi-needle, is it a multi-head machine? Running one head in production for 100 pieces means that you can only do one at a time. If you have a 2, 4, 6, or 12 head machine, obviously you're going to pump out those numbers a lot quicker, and that will also reflect your price. Now, while we're still on the subject of machines, the equipment itself costs you a certain amount of money to purchase. And if it is a single needle home machine, if it's a starter machine, it might have been a few $100s to $1,000. If you're talking about a multi-needle machine, then you're going to be investing $10,000. If it's a multi-head machine, it's going to be substantially more. With regards to the equipment, I always like to treat my equipment, even after it's paid for, as if it isn't, because that is a cost, a set cost of buying that equipment. And if my goal is to be profitable and to grow my business, then I always have to price based on that potential growth I'm hoping to experience. We're not even talking about all of the other overhead involved in running your embroidery business. You have, consumables like bobbin thread and stabilizers and all of the other things you need, mighty hoops and all of that kind of stuff. You also have to take into account your operating costs in your business, and that's going to be different for everybody. Some people start out with a home-based business. Your overhead is a lot less, but even then you still will need the proper insurance. You're going to be paying taxes. You're going to be having to pay an accountant at the end of the year, bookkeepers. You're going to have to buy certain software to operate your business. You're going to have a huge amount of things that you're going to have to take into consideration when you are looking at the overall costs of your business. And then you look at that machine and how it is the primary tool that is generating your actual income to cover all of those costs. So that's where it starts to get a little fuzzy and diluted, because you really need to sit down and structure a good business plan that is going to reflect your price, your cost that you're going to need to charge a customer to make sure that you are in the black and not in the red, and that you are also operating based on profitability and growth. Now, before we get into the big question of how much do I charge to embroider something, you really have to take a look at the equipment you have and how you are setting up or structuring yourself to actually do embroidery, because there are a couple of different ways. My original background in the industry was a contract embroiderer. We had multi-head equipment, and we actually did contract jobs for marketing companies and manufacturers, and the machine itself was really the profit center. I had to price my embroidery based off those machines being profitable, because it was not treated as a tool to sell something. And with the industry the way I see it, the most profitable way to be, especially if you're starting out with single head equipment and building your business, is not to go necessarily after that contract type of mentality, but to look at your machine as a tool that helps you to generate sales of other items, meaning that your primary objective should be to sell, let's say, baseball hats or t-shirts or tote bags or whatever other consumables that you can actually purchase, mark up and make, half decent margins on those items, and then have your machine itself be a tool that helps to personalize those items, and then you'll price your embroidery slightly differently because you're really trying to meet the objective of the machine covering its costs and making money and being profitable so that you can buy more equipment. But a lot of your growth is going to be based off of the profits that you make on that $4 hat that you're charging the end user $12 or $20 for. Your margins are going to be a lot better on those items that you're selling than the embroidery itself. So now that we have a bit of a foundation, I want to take a look at each of the points and we'll kind of address those the best we can with the limited information that we have. The first one is they have an order of 100 pieces, which if you have a single head machine and you are a embroidery company that is starting out, that will be a significant order. But if you're a commercial embroiderer who has multi-head equipment, 100 pieces is actually a fairly small order. Just to give you an idea, when we did operate in the 80s and 90s and into the early 2000s with our multi-head machines, we did literally have orders with caps that had 250,000 pieces. That was the size of our order. The same design on 250,000 hats, and they were put into mass production. Did my pricing for that order, was it less than 1,000 pieces or 100 pieces that came in? Of course, because we would have a machine running 3 shifts 24 hours a day for 6 months running that same design over and over and over again. It was built for profitability. Also taking into account that we set it up on a panel program so that it was literally on our loom, and we would run stabilizer through the back, and we had a canvas piece that we put down that had little windows cut out for each of the panels on the 24-head machines, so that as you finished a run, you'd literally tear off the 24 panels. You would then slide the stabilizer underneath the window, lock it down, and just load up and get ready for 24 more. This was geared for production. There wasn't hooping that was needed. There wasn't, the downtime that was needed in finishing, garments, or finishing or tearing off the back of, stabilizer on the hats, and all of the manual labor that was included in hooping those hats. So your actual costs can also dictate the size of the order and the repetition of the order, because if you are doing things of that nature, you want to be streamlined and profitable. You want those orders to come in, and a month later they leave the door and you were as efficient as you possibly could be. So for 100 pieces, if you are talking about a single needle machine, that is going to take time to run on your machine. You have to take into account that 5,000 stitches is actually, in my opinion, the perfect stitch count for profitability. I always looked at designs between 5,000 and 9,000 stitches as being my optimum stitch count for being profitable as an embroiderer, especially on those lower quantities, because on a single head machine you will, let's say, make money off of the hats that you're actually manufacturing. So if you have a 25 or 30,000 stitch design on the front of a hat, you're actually selling a lot less hats at the end of the day, and that machine's still working as hard as if you had a 5,000 stitch design and you were getting 4 times the amount of hats sold in the same period of time. So all of those things can be taken into consideration as well. Also, the amount of colors. If you're running a single needle machine and you have 6 colors that are in that design, there's going to be downtime because you're going to have to stop the machine and pull threads through and do all of that. We're having a multi-needle machine with automatic trimmers. That is the real advantage, because those can be production friendly. You can set up the design, set up the colors on it, and make sure that all of your 100 pieces are consistent with your hooping. You want to have a hooping station. You want to make sure you use lasers with crosshairs, make sure everything's set up, because once you have that established, you want to keep that machine going on one task and get that done and out the door. So all of that said, If it's 5,000 stitches, that is 2 thumbs up as far as I'm concerned. The 100 pieces, if you are running a single head machine, then yeah, that's a nice size order for you to be doing. You can be production friendly and make sure that you are dedicated and focused on getting that order in and out. So that is the first part. The second part is the pricing. If they are considered a bigger customer or a customer that you would want to, place a higher value on because you think that there could potentially be repeat orders or business coming in from them, then yeah, I would make some concessions personally at times where my price might, be influenced by that customer. If it is somebody that I want to establish a long-term relationship with, then you're going to have to, provide, in my opinion, quality. That is number one always, because they're only going to come back through the door if your quality is actually, good. And you want to also be as productive time-wise so that you can generate more income on your side. So price point, we're kind of keeping out of the picture with that, but the price is important more so to not only the customer, but to you, because you want to make sure that you don't underprice yourself and start working at a loss. Having the largest customer in the world doesn't help you if you're not making any money. So now let's get to the real root of the question, which was, I was thinking about $10 to $15 per coat. I'm afraid the price will scare them off, but I also don't want to charge like $6 a coat. Now here is where I am in full agreement, but there's going to be some give and take on this question, because if you are looking at $10 to $15 per coat, and if you aren't providing the actual garments, so you're not making any money off the garments, then I do think that is a fair price, because a 5,000 stitch design at $10 to $15 means you're making between $2 and $3 per 1,000 stitches. Now I know there's always been a bit of controversy on, do you price per 1,000 or time, and in reality the two are very much the same, because an embroidery machine is a mechanical machine. It runs at a set speed. I've always, when I tried to figure out pricing for embroidery, I looked at the number of heads I had, I looked at the machine speed, and keep in mind the speed that you have set on your machine is not necessarily your production output. Just because you run your machine at 700 or 800 stitches per minute, you really should factor that your output will consistently be between 400 to 500 stitches. So you have all of that, downtime, you have things coming off and on the machine, you have to set things up, you can have thread breaks, you have all of those things. I want to basically calculate how much production I get from that machine when it's running and when it's running in production mode. And then because it's running at, let's say, 500 stitches per 1,000, I can then equate that into how long things take and how much then I want to make when I've calculated all of my operating costs, which, as we discussed, can be anywhere from your machines to the consumables to all of your overhead and everything else that goes into running a business. So if I am looking at making $2 to $3 per 1,000 stitch, based on that whole scenario, then $10 to $15 should be fairly safe as far as running a single head machine and not necessarily having the consumables, the products that you're selling, like the baseball hats or the coats, as a profit center. You're just talking about using your machine to make money with your machine. So that could potentially be safe, but again, you're not going to necessarily get rich off of that either. So that is sort of the thing that I want to get out there. The other thing is, if that larger company that is giving you this order does have experience with embroidery or marketing companies in the this whole decorative apparel industry, they will know right away that that is potentially priced a little bit high if they are accustomed with dealing with companies that have multi-head machines. And that's fair, because you can't compete against a 6-head machine. It's just impossible if you only have a single head. If you want to get into that arena, then you need to get into the appropriate equipment, which gives you, more expenses, overhead. You need bigger facilities. So it all kind of is a big, circle that just goes around and around as you grow your business. Now, I'm also in agreement that charging $6 might be and is too low. I think that $1.20 per thousand, especially if you are using that machine as a profit center, you're not making money off of the coats that you're selling, then that probably is way too low, and you're going to be working yourself for nothing. It's a race to the bottom, and nobody wants to be in that position. So I would price basically to how much you need to make. If it's $10 to $15 and you know that that's what you need to be profitable, then that's your price, and the customer will also either come and give you the order, and if you do your job really well, you give them on-time delivery, good quality, all of the things that you would expect to get a reorder, then that is what you need to do to secure that customer for the long term. But I wouldn't price yourself too low. Don't look at what the competitors are doing, because they might have multi-head machines and you have a single head machine. Price yourself for profitability. All those things, you want to make sure that if you take this order on, you want to make sure that it is a pleasant experience for everybody involved. That is your customer and yourself. It has to be a win-win. Personally, I think the wisest thing for any embroiderer starting out is to obviously set up a good business plan. Make sure you define a niche, which is a profitable niche for you. I strongly suggest using your embroidery machine as a tool to sell other items, and that way you can price your embroidery so that it isn't necessarily making the profits you're looking for, but it is a tool to sell other items. Even though I mentioned in the beginning that I was a contract embroiderer, I did sort of test other waters as my career has evolved. At one point I had a kiosk in a mall, and at that kiosk we had a single head Tajima set up there. We only sold 2 items, baseball hats and Christmas stockings during the Christmas season. I was very, very selective with the designs that I actually had. They all ranged between that 5,000 to 9,000 stitches. I only gave customers a certain number of colors, thread colors to choose from, because they can drive you crazy if you give them too many. And I also made sure that all of my designs were digitized well. That is really, in my opinion, the key to being a profitable embroiderer, is either learn how to digitize properly or have a qualified digitizer create your designs, because there's 2 great things that will come from that. Number one, if they're good, the visual quality of your designs will be good or exceptional, and that is what gets customers coming back. On the other side of the coin is a design can look great, but if it runs terribly on your machine, then it's not worth its weight, because you just lost money. If your designs are breaking threads constantly, if there's too much unneeded density, if the registration is off, if all of that isn't functioning to perfection, then you are not going to be profitable as an embroiderer, and it will trickle down and affect everything else that you do. Hopefully this video answered some of your questions, but more importantly, I hope it started to get the wheels turning. Now, I hope you enjoyed this one, and be sure to watch the next video. Looking for the best beginner embroidery multi-needle machine? Meet the Tajima Sai. Precise, reliable, and user-friendly. Unlock exclusive bonuses by filling out the form on our website. We'll connect you with an official Tajima partner to complete your purchase and claim your rewards. Elevate your embroidery today and click the link below to learn more.